Greatest Hits Radio, drive time 5:47. It's confession time. Played you Paul McCartney in Wings and Live and Let Die. Today's confession, first of the week, comes from Mickey the Grip. Thank you, Mickey the Grip, for letting us know about today's tale. If you have one for us, confessions at greatesthitsradio.co.uk. Sister Susie and the brother from another gutter in position. Simon and the crew, after all these years, it's time to get this confession off my chest. When I was in my mid-20s, this is the late 80s, I was fortunate to work with a film crew on a production that was based in a studio but also shot in various locations as well. I won't name the film, but it's fair to say that it wasn't a major success. It in fact was to be found in the bargain bucket in Blockbuster video stores very shortly after completion without a cinema release.
Okay.
So it's not a huge hit then.
No.
We might not have seen it. However, it was a very exciting time for me and I was happy to travel with the camera department as a grip and visit many different locations to film the scenes. There was a young woman with us, Jasmine, who worked as a second assistant to the director. She had blonde, bobbed hair, stunning blue eyes, and was drop-dead gorgeous. Most of the guys on the unit had a crush on her, including myself. But I realised she was completely out of my league, especially as she spoke so eloquently. I got the impression that she had a very upper-class upbringing. Simon, the sound man, was obsessed with her. I thought it was addressing me. The sound man is called Simon, and he is obsessed with her. At every opportunity, Simon, the sound man, would be doing his best work trying to impress her. It became daily entertainment to watch Simon engineer situations to get close to Jasmine and use his smile and best lines to win her over. However, even though he was a tall, good-looking guy and also spoke with a rather posh accent, it was all to no avail. We were filming in Fort William for 2 weeks, and therefore all the crew were booked into a hotel. One morning, Jasmine did not show up for work, and we were informed that she'd caught a virus and had to stay in bed at the hotel. That evening, as I went through the reception, I saw Simon with the biggest bouquet. That's Simon the Sandman, by the way.
Yes, not you.
No, not me. With the biggest bouquet of beautiful flowers I have ever seen. He was arranging with the receptionist to have them delivered to Jasmine's room. I had
Sorry.
ever the romantic.
Yes.
I had to admire his tenacity. He was clearly smitten with the lovely Jasmine. After a few days of convalescing, Jasmine said she felt better, and just by chance, I met her in a lift of the hotel on her first day of returning to work. I said good morning, and she said, and I said that I hoped she was feeling much better. She then proceeded to tell me that the virus had really knocked her for six, and during her days off, she'd been completely disorientated. So much so that she'd been given a beautiful bouquet of flowers. She was embarrassed. She had no idea who'd sent them. Now, all I said was, "Oh, you did get them then?" And before I could say any more, she gave me a massive hug and thanked me, gushing. It was such a lovely thought.
Well done.
I know that at that precise moment, I should have told her that it was Simon, the sound man, not you, Father Simon, who had been the thoughtful one and sent her those flowers. But I was like a rabbit caught in the headlamps. I was captivated by her beaming smile and the intensity of those blue eyes. And instead, I simply said, "So glad you like them." She thanked me again, and we walked to the minibus to travel to the location. During the journey, I started to feel anxious. In my defense, I told myself that I'd not directly told a lie. Lovely Jasmine had just made the wrong assumption, and I had failed to correct her. But a sense of dread came over me. Jasmine would be so angry with me when the truth came out. And how would Simon, the sound man, react when he discovered that I had taken all the credit for his kind and expensive deed? What if the whole film unit got to hear about my deceitful act? I just about decided to come clean to Jazz, as I called her. But when I looked across at her, she captivated me again with that smile and those teeth and her natural beauty.
Dear, oh
She was so fragrant.
Fragrant? Right, lovely.
Oh, I can wait. I thought I won't say anything for a while. Over the next week, Jasmine and I shared coffee breaks together and chatted endlessly. We would sit together at lunchtime on the dining bus. Occasionally, I would see Simon peering over with jealousy and look of disappointment, but nothing was ever mentioned about the flowers. I think he saw Jasmine's non-acknowledgement of the bouquet as the ultimate rejection and finally accepted that she really wasn't into him at all. Jazz and I started seeing each other out of work time as well. We became exceptionally close. It was a complete surprise to me, but she seemed to be so happy in my company. I was tempted to confess about the flowers on a number of occasions, but I couldn't bring myself to burst this perfect bubble that we were in. We had a magical time together, Father Simon. However, the relationship didn't last long after the film production had finished. I went back to my humble abode, she went back to her castle, and our lives went in different ways. I guess you could say we had a brief but very happy affair together, which I always recall with fondness. However, I do feel guilty and request forgiveness for misleading the beautiful Jasmine and thus not giving her the opportunity to thank Simon the Sound Man for the wonderful flowers, and also to Simon for accepting the gratitude that was rightly his and letting him think he had been snubbed by the girl of his dreams. This story has never been told until today. So now is the time to confess, says Mickey the Grip, to Simon the Sound Man. Sister Susie, I think, might be quite harsh on this one.
Well, yeah, I just think, it's lovely to get flowers, and, you should thank the person that gave you the flowers, the right person, and taking responsibility for someone else's. He spent a lot of money on those flowers.
He did.
You just went, yeah, that was me. And if you were meant to be, then it would have happened. So I'm sorry, Mickey. Can't forgive you.
Brother from another gutter.
Should have left a note, Simon. Should have left. Did they not teach you that at Posh Boy School? Leave a note with the flowers. Then Jasmine would have known.
Disorientated. She was ill.
Unlucky, sunshine. Looks like not everything's going to go your way on your daddy's yacht. And for that reason, I choose to forgive.
I don't know where Daddy's yacht comes
One
into it.
strike for the little guy.
Forgiveness or no on the text 61054. Confessions Monday to Thursday on Greatest Hits Radio. You can get the smart speaker. Send your confession to confessions@greatesthitsradio.co.uk. Mickey the Grips was how he stole Jasmine from Simon the Sound Man whilst out on location at Fort William. People's verdict in like this.
So Kevin in Ascot says, completely forgiven. What kind of muppet sends expensive flowers to a girl he fancies without telling her who they're from? Simon is obviously an idiot, and she's much better off without him. Rachel, Simon brackets the sound man was way too smooth. Big bunch of flowers, a bit over the top. Maybe Jasmine actually liked non-posh boy Mickey anyway, and technically he didn't say they were from him. I'm with Matt. Vicky in Northampton, not forgiven for the simple reason that Mickey the Grip tried to use that age-old excuse of she was too beautiful, I was too captivated by her, I couldn't possibly confess. In other words, it was her fault. Come on, Mick, get a grip. You're entirely responsible for your own actions. And finally, Sean says, ding dong, opportunity knocks, ka-ching. Don't look a gift horse in the mouth. Forgiven. What bloke in the right mind would turn down that chance?
And does he say it in that tone of voice?
Definitely did it like that.
Okay, Mickey the Grip sounding okay. A strong contender for the smart speaker.
Yeah.
If you have a good one for us, please send it in. That's basically the way that works. And everything else will come from there. And if we love your confession, we'll read it out. And if it's the best of the week, the smart speaker will be yours. Here we go. With today's, which comes from Brother Louis. Dear Simon and the worshipful collective of forgivers. My confession takes place back in May 1994. But the seeds were sown 12 years previously when I first saw my favourite band, Hot Chocolate, perform live at the Dominion Theatre, Tottenham Court Road. I saw them a few times after then. But in 1987, the main man, Errol Brown, quit the group, and it appeared that they were over forever. I was mortified, but delighted a few years later, when not only had Errol Brown hit the comeback trail as a solo artist with a new backing band, but the remaining members of Hot Chocolate continued with an Errol lookalike as their new singer. I was able to see both versions, Errol Brown and his band, and Hot Chocolate with their lookalike, who was good, albeit several years younger and nowhere near as sophisticated as Errol himself. That's the rock and roll background. So to May 1994. I was in a relationship that was only a few months old, and my girlfriend was off on a pre-arranged holiday for a week on the Friday night. I worked most weekends, and the weekend she went happened to be my weekend off. And who were playing at a venue in Rochester in Kent, only 40 minutes drive from my home in Essex?
Wow.
Only Slipknot. No.
Slipknot?
Sorry, my mistake.
Right.
Only Hot Chocolate with their younger doppelganger on the vocals. Having got nothing else to do that weekend, I phoned up on the Saturday afternoon and booked one ticket. I could almost hear the surprise and pity from the lady on the phone as I said, one ticket, in answer to her question of how many would you like. And so a few hours later, there I was on my own, scrubbed up and looking good, walking into the Casino Room's night spot in the centre of Rochester, amongst all the couples and groups of ladies out for a good night out. I was shown by a member of staff to a table for 12 and sat there at one end, on my own. At the other end of the table were a group of 6 ladies, all of similar age to me, around 30, who paid me no attention as they were they paid me no attention.
As they were?
Yes. As we all started tucking into our scampi and chips in a basket type meal, which presumably was scampi and chips.
Yeah.
That's presumably what it was.
Yeah.
As the evening progressed, I sat there with my pint of orange and lemonade because I was driving, waiting for the DJ to finish. Oh, the DJ's never they just go on and on. So the band could come on and do their thing. When the band started up, it became apparent that the women in this party had not realised that the singer was not Errol Brown. Even though he was much younger and taller and nowhere near as suave, they kept on calling out, "We love you, Errol!" And I'm thinking, it's not Errol. As the main man was strutting his stuff, even though it was clearly not him. Eventually, due to having to move my chair to allow a couple of the female party back to their seats, one of them spoke to me, and inevitably I was asked why I was there on my own. Not wanting to sound weird and lonely, I came out with, "Oh, I'm working." To which came the obvious question, "Well, what do you do?" Well, thinking on my feet and taking into account that I was wearing a blazer, smart trousers, shirt and a tie, traditional rock and roll
Yes,
fare,
obviously.
I blurted out, "I'm a driver for the band."
Oh, no.
My street cred instantly soared by about 3 million%, and I was suddenly of use to the girls of this party. Could you arrange it so that after the show we could meet them, especially Errol? This was the question that was put to me by one of them, who I recall was named Siobhan. Thinking even more on my feet, I replied very calmly, "Oh, well, I'll see what I can do. Shouldn't be a problem. Just leave it with me." I may have sounded calm, but was panicking inside that I would be rumbled as being a sad and lonely individual. The band was still playing at this point, and I was being bombarded with questions about them, and of course Errol Brown, who wasn't even there. I farmed the questions off well, I think, answering questions about how nice they were, where were they playing next, and how long had I worked for them, and so on. One of the girls, Stephanie, told me she was a massive fan of Errol Brown. I'm thinking, well, you're not that much of a fan of Errol Brown. But she was very keen on meeting him. I didn't have the heart to shatter their illusions that the singer, albeit very good, was not who they thought it was. Eventually, Hot Chocolate finished their set, and I told the girls, "Hold tight, I'm going to go to the dressing room and check it's okay with Errol and the boys for them to meet them afterwards, and they can come back and get all the autographs." By now, I was in a flow of untruths, and to add even more credibility to my story, I insisted that they keep it to themselves, not tell anyone else, coming out with stuff like, "The lads can't cater for everyone, or they'll be here all night." Then I added, "They're not normally in a rush to disappear, but they do need time to freshen up and change after the gig." Yes, that's the sound of them.
Yeah.
That doesn't work. Having ensured their willingness to comply just as the DJ began to spin the discs again, I then told them I'd be back in 5 minutes. "Stay where you are," I said. "Stay where you are, I'll be back." All 6 were thrilled, pleased as punch as I walked away in the direction of the stage, which happened to be also not far from the exit, and I made a quick detour from the venue, got in my car, headed home rather rapidly, chuckling to myself as I sped up the A2. I also chuckled at the thought of them perhaps making their own way to the stage door and telling a perplexed band that their driver had promised them an informal meet and greet, and then the potential implications that could have caused. In time, though, I felt a bit mean, especially as I had met Errol Brown a couple of years previously, one of his solo gigs, and he was a true gent, a lovely, humble man who, of course, sadly passed away in 2015. But I beg forgiveness, Father Sam, for not only leading the ladies on to thinking that they were going to get to meet their musical heroes. In addition, I should also beg forgiveness from all those who worked with Hot Chocolate, who remain my favourite artist to this day, for my deceit, which probably led to half a dozen ladies from Kent into thinking they were let down by them and their lying staff all those years ago, where in fact it wasn't the staff who were lying, it was me, Brother Louie, who sent in today's tale. I think the new singer of Hot Chocolate is Kenny Simon, but anyway, so presumably that's who Brother Louie is talking about. Sister Susie is a voice of responsibility in these matters.
Well, Brother Louie, do you know what? I feel like, one, you should be confident in going somewhere on your own, because it's okay to go somewhere on your own. Just own it. Don't feel sad.
In your blazer
First
and
of
your
all,
smart trousers.
You're dressed up. That's fine. Do you know what? I'm actually feeling in a forgiving mood, because I think you actually saved them some embarrassment, because if they'd have gone up to the guy that they thought was Errol and wasn't Errol, then they'd probably feel a bit rubbish. So therefore, I'm going to forgive you, because, everyone's a winner.
Oh,
Brother from another gutter?
On. Well, yes, I agree with Suze, because, you know, it was the women who made the mistake, really. It was Siobhan, who clearly didn't know that this was not Errol Brown, in fact. And you could almost say that it started with a miss. Oh! Started with a miss, Suze. Are you having that?
No.
Yes. So that reason I choose to forgive.
People's verdict, please. 61054. Start your message with Simon. Do you forgive Brother Louis? 61054 on the text. The answers are coming in now. But merely moments ago, we had a confession from Brother Louis, all about Brother Louis's love of hot chocolate and how he pretended to work for the band just to get out of an awkward situation. He's also wearing a blazer and slacks. So people's verdict is in like this.
Phil O in Leeds. The man is definitely not forgiven. He's a rotter, and there's no doubt about it.
No doubt about it. Good.
Joe in Amesbury says, well, no doubt about it. Forgiven. It would have destroyed the illusion. And finally, Andrew, who was a lighting engineer for assorted bands, including the Police, said, forgiven for impersonating road crew. I spent many a concert denying I was anything to do with the band so as to deter over-enthusiastic fans' backstage access. Love from Sebastian.
We would like some backstage confessions, definitely. If you have one, confessions at greatesthitsradio.co.uk. They can be anonymous, we'll change the names, all that kind of stuff. So it's confession time. If you have a story for us, we would love to hear about it. If you could keep it to under... Well... Roger, who sends in today's confession, was originally 5 pages long.
5 pages?
I mean... Wow. So, Roger, it's slightly edited, I have to say. Anyway, if you have a fantastic story, confessions at greatesthitsradio.co.uk. If it's our favourite, then you get the smart speaker. Christmas confessions, of course, will be expected. Lots and lots of Christmas tales often come on. Confessions at greatesthitsradio.co.uk. Anyway, Down Under, Men at Work, of course. It's confession time. Let's see what we have here. Play the music. There you go. That'll do. So, Roger sends in today's tale, which, well, let's see what you make of this. Father Simon, I humbly prostrate myself before the Drive Time Collective for a sin committed in my days as a student in the north of England in the 1980s. As with most students, my first year was spent living in halls of residence on the college campus. Each hall consisted of 32 single rooms, each containing a bed, a desk, a battered angle poise lamp, and a wardrobe with a small single sink. This is all relevant. Bathrooms with showers and toilets were on each landing, and each block was single sex. Anyway, soon into my first year, I made good friends with a few of the lads on my floor, 2 of whom I shall refer to as Big Pete and Small Mike. Both were keen rugby players, liked a good drink. Like all other blocks, our building contained a ground floor flat in which lived a mature student whose role was that of block warden for that year. Our warden, we shall call him Dave, was a hairy, mature student from Middlesbrough.
What?
His official role was to ensure order was kept in each block and help keep first-year students and help them with any problems that they might have. What with them being first years and everything. Now, Dave let it slip one night that he was in possession of a master key, which opened every door in the block. I immediately spotted the potential for juvenile mischief that this presented. Together, we hatched a dastardly plan for a week of trickery on our mate, Big Pete. Now, as well as being on the heavy side, Big Pete was fastidiously clean. Every evening he would return from his studies or rugby training and head straight for the shower. The whole floor would then have to suffer his tuneless renderings of the hits of the 80s as he scrubbed and buffed himself clean. This, we decided, would be our chance for mischief and mayhem. So, day one, Big Pete, as usual, emerged from his room, locked his door, headed to the shower. Soon as we heard the sound of the running water accompanied by the opening bars of Spandau Ballet's Gold being sung off-key, both Mike and I crept from our rooms. To our delight, we discovered the master key allowed us to unlock Big Pete's door. Mike turned on the cold tap of the basin, whilst I simply spilt Big Pete's cup of pens onto his desk, moved a few things around. Then, just as we entered the room, we left quietly and locked the door. A small start, admittedly. The next night, the same routine. Tap on, pens spilled, except this time we turned on Pete's desk lamp, as well as removing the cover from his squash racket, placed the items on the floor. Now, this time, when he returned to his room, he uttered a quizzical expletive as he shut the door behind him. And that night in the college bar, Pete explained how funny things have been going on in my room. You don't think it's haunted by a poltergeist, do you? Well, for the next hour or so, we shared scary stories and theorised about the existence of ghosts. Pete started to talk about going and seeing the college chaplain to ask for his advice. Maybe, he said, I could ask him to check the room for ghosts and poltergeists. Now, this was quite something coming from Pete, who wasn't the religious kind at all. Never mind, pal, it'll all be over soon, but we did have a big finish planned for the following night. Notice a complete lack of compassion for their friend who's thinking of going to see the priest.
Yeah.
If and when Big Pete left his room for his shower, we would both sneak into his room. Mike would secrete himself under Pete's bed.
Oh, no.
Whilst I would replace his ordinary lamp bulb with a red bulb, turn on his tap and scatter a few things on the floor before exiting and locking his room, leaving Mike inside. So the following night, Mike and I found ourselves waiting for the sound of Big Pete leaving for his nightly shower. As soon as the opening warbled bars of You Can't Hurry Love could be heard coming from the bathroom, we sprang into action. Mike slid under Pete's metal bed whilst I moved and scattered his possessions around the room and changed his light bulb. Locking the door behind me, I returned to my room. Sure enough, a few minutes later, I saw Big Pete emerge from the bathroom, holding his shampoos and other toiletries in one hand, whilst holding his undersized towel around his waist with his other hand.
Lovely.
As he passed my room, I quietly walked to my door and glanced around the corner to watch him as he unlocked his door and entered his room. On cue, Mike grasped the metal frame of the bed he was hiding under and shook it violently from side to side as he let out a banshee-like scream. At this, Big Pete let out a louder and even more terrifying scream, jumped backwards, dropped his toiletries and ran from the room towards the stairs, still clinging onto his towel.
Oh.
Good.
Shouting in a high-pitched voice somewhere above poltergeists and exorcisms, and he definitely needed to find the chaplain. And thus it was that Big Pete fled screaming down the stairs to look for the chaplain, and several other students on their way up the stairs looked up. And what a sight met their eyes as Big Pete leapt past them, towel flapping dangerously in his own slipstream.
Yeah.
Once we'd finished laughing, both Mike and I started to realise that maybe things had gone rather too well. And so we set about trying to track down Big Pete to explain everything. He has almost forgiven me, by the way, and he'd almost forgiven me by the time we graduated some years later. I had some explaining to do to Dave the warden, by the way, who found himself in hot water for lending the key in the first place. You reckon?
Well, yeah.
And so I found myself begging forgiveness from the Holy Collective, not for what I inflicted on Big Pete, who shouldn't have been so gullible, but for the innocent first years who were climbing the stairway. I also seek forgiveness for the impact on the poor college chaplain, whose quiet enjoyment of Coronation Street was so rudely interrupted by a semi-naked man in a bit of a lather, probably for the first time, but you never can be too sure. That's today's confession. It comes from Roger. As I say, that's kind of an edited version of what he sent down. It's like a third, no, maybe a quarter of what he sent. But we get the gist. He's a bit of a prankster, but did you find it entertaining and funny? Let's check in with Sister Susie as to whether she's going to forgive or not.
Well, Roger, it was fun, but I also thought it was a bit mean. And if it was, I just always put myself in that place. And if I'd have come into my room at university and the light bulb would change red and the bed was shaking, it would have terrified me. I've seen The Exorcist. No, thank you very much. So I can't forgive you. I think you're a bit mean to Big Pete.
Checking in with the brother from another gutter.
You have to ask, how is Hairy Pete getting hold of this master key? I mean, different times, everyone, but, you know, that didn't seem okay at all. And Big Pete with his small towel, that seems like a bit of a design flaw. So, you know, I mean, all of these things considered, I am going to forgive.
Oh, you are going to forgive?
Yeah.
Okay. People's verdict, do you forgive Roger for his prank? We'd like to hear from you, 61054. Start your message with Simon. That's 61054. First word is Simon for the People's Verdict on Wednesday's Confession. People's Verdict on today's Confession from Roger. The prankster in the student hall, and then someone who wasn't wearing quite enough towelage when they visited the chaplain. Well, actually, yes, chaplains. We'd like to hear from you. Clergy of all kinds. We're going to have Clergy Week. Confessions at greatesthitsradio.co.uk. Anyway, People's Verdict, what do they say?
So Gary says, forgiven. It gave me fantastic memories from when I worked as a caretaker at a hall of residence in Leeds. So many laughs over numerous pranks encountered. Happy days. Neil, absolutely forgiven, hilarious, took me back to my army training days. It's got my memory going. Lisa, I forgive him, sounds like a solid uni prank to me. And finally, Denise, I'm with Susie, not forgiven. Yes. I'm pretty sure I would have spent the next few nights struggling to sleep as a result of that prank. And I wouldn't want an episode of my favourite soap interrupted with that either.
No, imagine that if you've got a gentleman with barely a towel around his waist saying, "Can I talk to you, Padre?"
No, nobody wants that.
Caretakers, that's an interesting thing. Caretakers' confessions. They're going to have a lot to tell us. It could be as anonymous as you like. Well, it's either anonymous or it's not, but yeah, you know what I'm saying. You can change your name. If not, we'll change it for you. Confessions at greatesthitsradio.co.uk. It's 30 minutes away from 6 o'clock. That is Greatest Hits Radio. I've got to be able to say the name of the station quite clearly. Otherwise, it looks like a contractual thing. Just slightly, the reason for the stumble is I'm slightly edgy about today's confession because it definitely has a 15 certificate. We've never had a 15 certificate one. I don't think we did and a little bit about whether to include it or not, but I think it was approved. But basically, if you've got any problems with it, it's producer Susie.
Oh, really?
You need to correspond. It's an anonymous confession.
Right.
For reasons that will become obvious.
Okay.
If I take this slightly slower than normal, it's because I need to adopt an air of disapproval.
Good. I'm sure we all will.
Anonymous has been in touch. Father Simon, Brother Matt and Sister Susie, the true trio of forgiveness. As will become apparent very quickly, all names, workplaces and so on will be changed solely to protect myself and my co-accused. This story has never been aired in public before. My confession dates back to over 30 years ago when times were simpler. I then took out a couple of lines where he illustrates how simpler times were 30 years ago.
Okay.
Imagine two people, my co-accused and I, bored at work, thinking about ways to relieve the tediousness of that particular moment. A cunning but simple plan is hatched to play a 10-second prank on a colleague with, in our opinion, side-splitting humour for all involved. The colleague, we'll call him Edwin, was an adjacent office worker working away conscientiously very near us when his desk phone rang. It must be clearly stated at this point that Edwin was a dedicated family man who adored his wife, 2 gorgeous children, his house, and accordingly spent many hours telling us all, showing us lots of photographs, family holiday tales, paintings done by his children, and so on. You get the picture. Edwin picked up the phone and heard a gruff voice say, which actually was just coming from our office just a few yards away, but the voice said, "Listen, sunshine, I'm going to say this once. Stay away from my wife. All right?" And hung up.
Wow.
Well, Father Simon, we were going to call him back straight away and laugh and, as cruel pranksters do, just explain his momentary bewilderment. This lapse between our gruff call and us ringing him straight back was, however, interrupted by our phone ringing almost immediately. It was our boss, giving me and my co-prankster an immediate and urgent task to perform. And all thoughts of ringing Edwin straight back were forgotten, but hey, it was a good laugh, wasn't it? Well, the day at work subsequently finished. We all went home. The phone call to Edwin explaining the prank had not been made, but we would explain all the next day. The following morning, I arrived at work a few minutes late, but just in time for a morning meeting with all the members of staff in the canteen. We sat at long canteen-style tables. I mean, that's the point of... That's the point of it.
It's the canteen.
That's where canteen tables come from. We all sat facing each other.
Just call them tables.
That's the role of a canteen table.
Very fixated on the canteen, isn't he?
Okay. Right. My co-accused glanced nervously at me from across the large canteen table.
Oh, in the canteen.
Yep. And lowered his eyes quickly. There was a definite air of tangible despondency about that. The recipient of our gruff voice call, Edwin, was nowhere to be seen. The silence was only broken by uncomfortable shuffling and eyes fixed on their morning canteen cuppers. In front of the 20-strong gathering, our leader told us In what only could be called a funereal voice, after what seemed like an age, he told us that Edwin had spoken to that morning on the phone and that he wouldn't be coming into work today. Edwin told our leader that he had received a phone call the previous day, whilst at work, from the husband of a lady he had in fact been having an affair with.
What?
And told him to stay away from his wife. Edwin had now fully confessed to his wife that he was indeed
Oh my goodness.
having an affair. The consequences, obviously, far-reaching. Where do I go from there, Father Simon? Should forgiveness be sought by myself and my co-accused? Probably not, but in our pathetic defence, we would never have made such a call if any suspicions of misbehaving had been rumoured whatsoever, but there were none. As for Edwin, well, I don't know what happened to him, I'm afraid, as I moved on soon after to a large employer's in Birmingham with an even larger canteen. We were chastened, of course. He likes his canteen. We were chastened as we learnt pranks can be expensive, Father Simon. The jury, I'm sure, will be split. I don't think it will be. And yes, for the record, my co-accused and I did feel bad about what happened, but were we wholly responsible? Well, here's a confession with real-world consequences. And when you play, if you're a prankster and a practical joker, you have to, well, maybe you shouldn't, because pranks are usually not funny, in my opinion. Sister Susie, the voice of responsibility.
Well, I'm a bit speechless, really, because it's just so shocking that would happen, and I just can't. It just shows you just don't know what's going on behind closed doors, do you?
No.
So maybe just stay out of it, and maybe don't make a joke of it. So I don't think I can forgive you,
Sorry, Anonymous.
or him, or Edwin for doing what he did.
Brother from another guy.
Yeah, I mean, it is. I had no idea it was going to go that way. Absolutely no idea. That is shocking. However, I mean, let me say this. Edwin is the one who's been, showing everyone his photos, and then, everything else has been going on. So can I be alone in thinking that maybe Edwin bears some of the responsibility? Yes, he does. And also, we got to hear the Ray Winston voice again.
That's
Brilliant, brilliant. So for that reason, let's forgive.
What?
Karma is coming round for Edwin, knocking at the door.
It's the people's verdict. Please do you forgive? 61054. First word is Simon. Forgiveness, yes or no? Many moments ago, an anonymous confession was broadcast on Greatest Hits Radio at drive time, which has shocked a nation. It was a little prank. Stay away from my wife. But it just turned out that the person that they pranked was actually having an affair and then confessed anyway. So that's basically where we were. The people's verdict has come in, and it's like this.
Yes, it's split. Bob in Winchester says, definitely forgiven. Truly belly laughed at that. Edwin had karma. Lisa says, I can't forgive. I have to agree with Susie on this one. Total shocker. Dutchy in Leicester says, Edwin got caught fair and square. So much for doting on his family and acting all saintly. Perfect karma, I say. But Bert says, I'm generally full on sheep in following Matt's forgiveness. But tonight, OMG, that had a totally unexpected ending.
Yes.
Not forgiven. Sorry, Matt.
Your confession, please. Confessions at greatesthitsradio.co.uk. Which is going to be chosen, though, as our favourite confession of the week? Who's going to get the smart speaker? Monday's confession was from Mickey the Grip. He stole Jasmine right in front of Simon the Sound Man's eyes after taking the credit for the flowers that Simon said, if you remember that. Next up was brother Louis, all about his love of hot chocolate, resulting in him pretending to be their driver. Roger provided yesterday's confession, the prankster in the student halls, hiding under the beds and everything. And you've just had our final confession of the week, the anonymous confession with the 15 rating and the unhappy ending. Matt, what are you going to go for?
I'm going to go for anonymous, because that was such a shocker. That it was.
We can't
so
reward
smart
that kind of
speaker.
behaviour.
Well, I choose to reward
Okay.
that kind of
All right.
behaviour.
I don't want to reward any of them. I think they've all been really naughty this week. But I feel like the one that made me laugh the most was Mickey. Mickey the Grip, was it?
Yes, Mickey the Grip. Yes, that was the one about how he stole Jasmine. When Simon the Sound Man should have actually had Jasmine. I'm going to agree with Susie. That's
Typical.
That's who I'm going to agree with. So well done, Mickey the Grip. You get the smart speaker, and if you'd like to challenge for it next week, send in your top confession.